Namaste. Sisters and brothers, friends, fellow Indians, I've been asked to speak on foundations of Indian culture. The word culture comes from the root cult, which has a beautiful meaning in Latin. It means to grow, just as in the word agriculture. And therefore, it's necessary for us to know what seeds and roots lie buried in the soil of our consciousness so that we can cultivate it rightly, reap the full harvest, and enjoy the fruits and flowers of long centuries, millenniums of labor that those who have passed before us have put into this wonderful soil that we know today as Mother India. Yes, I am proud to belong to a nation which gave some beautiful, remarkable truths which still can save humanity. And in the course of this 45 minutes or an hour lecture, I'll be sharing some of these truths. We can then see for ourselves how valid they are for today, for tomorrow, as much as they were valid yesterday. So, the beauty of Indian culture, Indian thought is that it was built from within outwards. It was not like there was a nation which suddenly got free as we understand today and then we started developing upon it. And the reason why Indian civilization has actually survived, not just centuries, but even before that, if we go back to the times of the Mahabharata, even then there were invasions. And it has survived centuries at least of invasions is because it built itself on a very mighty edifice of something which is best known today as Sanatana Dharma. Now, Sanatana Dharma, crudely translated as eternal religion, the word religion has different connotation than the word dharma means. But basically, it means that it's built upon certain universal truths of life, a mighty law of life. That's what the seers discovered. They were not in search of a religion, they were not in search of numbers to convert people, but they were in search of truth. And it is these truths which led them to where they were. They could go at the farthest end, and then they understood this truth from various angles. That's something very beautiful about Indian thought. It's not happy exploring truth from one angle, but from multiple angles. And all that truths they discovered, they left it in a body of literature we know today as the Vedas. Vedas means knowledge, secret knowledge. Similarly, the Upanishads culled out from the Vedas, they mean the knowledge which belongs to the inner being, the secret knowledge which is hidden inside. And this knowledge has the power to liberate us, as Madam was mentioning, from ignorance, from bondage, to give us true freedom. Who doesn't want freedom? We all want freedom. But freedom doesn't come just by saying I'm a free person. Because even when we say we are free, we still continue to be slaves of our thoughts, ideas, opinions, viewpoints, ideologies, religions, of the milieu we live in, environment, society, our own understanding about life, our desires, our impulses, our emotions, and a whole lot of things. We don't realize that we are bound, terribly bound. And this knowledge liberates us. Ya vidya cha vimukta. It liberates us from all these bondages. So this knowledge is of eternal and perennial importance. So I'll just quickly speak of some of these truths, which are the discoveries of the scientists of the soul in far back times, but because the soul is the imperishable element, they are as valid today as they were yesterday. And the first discovery they made, let me assure, this is a very, very scientific discovery in the sense that we don't have to believe in these things. We can try it out in our life and rediscover them. So it's science in that sense. Only the field is different, but they are recoverable in the consciousness of man just as they were yesterday. So in that sense, they are science based on observations, based on discoveries, based on replication of result down the millenniums till today's times, as we are celebrating Sri Aurobindo's 150th year, right up to Sri Aurobindo, once again replicated in countless other saints and sages, and even taken it further. So the other aspect of this mighty edifice is that it allows us the freedom to explore once the edifice is built. So Indian culture is not about certain fixed customs, rituals, etc. That's the most external part. It's like I may wear a sari of a certain color, or I may wear it of a different color. I may sport a mark or may not sport a mark. That's not the relevant part. But the edifice is within. So it's spread from within outwards. And when it comes to from within outward, then you can go any number of the progress can be, the discovery yet continues. So that was the beauty of eternal religion, that it did not put a stop point, a full stop, a period to its discoveries. It's like we can go as further as we want to the limits of our consciousness because it is infinite. We can equally go as further outward to express it and manifest it in number of ways. To take a little story from one of the Puranas, that once Brahma and Vishnu, they want to discover who is their origin, what is their origin. Because this is the beauty of Indian thought, right goes up to the origin. Where is the origin? It goes beyond time. This itself is so liberating that we don't belong to a particular ideology or to a religion or to a state or to a language, but we belong to that origin, which is the origin of all mankind, all creation in fact. So the divine manifests himself as a column of light, and he says, okay, one of you go up and one of you go down, and whoever comes first after discovering the end point will be regarded as the winner and will be the first one to be worshipped. And they both travel up and down and everywhere, and yet they cannot discover the end point of this column of light. Meaning thereby that basically truth is infinite. And this is the first discovery, that because truth is one yet infinite. So though it is one, it expresses itself in number of ways, in multiple ways. So the first of these discoveries is Ekam eva Dvitiyam. There is one without a second. They didn't choose to name it for a particular reason. But you can call it with any name. Ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. The same person who is sitting here is a speaker, is also a husband, he is also a father, I am also a son to somebody, I am a friend, and so many things at the same time. So too the divine can be approached from multiple angles, and from that angle we can have our own unique relation with the divine. So while this is one without a second, yet there are many approaches, and depending on the approach we can form a certain kind of relation with this reality, which is beyond name and form. So we can form the relation with this reality of a father, we can form a relation with this reality of a lover and beloved, of a master, of a teacher, of a leader of mankind. And also we can say that he is beyond all relations, he is the absolute, he is impersonal, he is universal, and beyond that he is the supreme personality. So all this multiplicity of approaches, this wide Catholicity is built in the system of Indian culture. It accepts all streams that approach God, and you'll be surprised that including atheism and agnosticism, even they find a place in this vast body of. But the only condition was that it should be a seeking for truth. If there is a seeking for truth, that's all that is required. And let us make our own discoveries, and they have given us a way and approach, but we can make our own discoveries. So the first great truth is Ekam eva Dvitiyam, the one without a second. And this itself is a non-dogmatic, non-religious. It's something which transcends religion. It cannot be put into any one single narrow formula, which makes it very vast and very liberating. So its starting point itself is very high. So Indian thought encourages seeking for truth. It's not just a way of life as it is often understood. It's that way of life is based on something very fundamental. And that fundamental is truth. Satyameva jayate nanritam. And what that truth is, it's not an ideology and belief, but truth that is the stable basis of this entire creation. That which is an imperishable support, that which is the stable, that which scientists are also, trying to figure out what is that last particle, what is that last substratum on which the entire dance of creation is taking place. Is there one or not? On what are space and time established? What impels the mind, the breath, the speech, the actions? These were the great questions which these rishis of yore asked and found their answers. This is something very wonderful. As a psychologist, I always used to wonder, is it really the activity of the neurons? It's so silly, to believe that activity of unconscious neurons generates consciousness and thought. So there one finds really the answers. The second beautiful aspect of Indian culture is it pursued two ideals, two extremes. Unfortunately, only one got popularized in the common mind today. It pursued worldly life to its utmost possibility. And it pursued otherworldly life to its utmost possibility. So we have these two ideals beautifully enshrined in these two very interesting words, Lila and Moksha. So moksha, the one with which we are more familiar, moksha means that ultimately one is freed from all the bondages. Life is misery, it's suffering, and the only way you can do is you can be free from it, and moksha was regarded as an ideal. And this moksha was epitomized, it meant initially an inner moksha, this ideal of the Jivan Mukta. We don't have to run away from life to achieve this mukti. It's a condition of consciousness. And yet this ideal was stressed to an extreme by sannyasis, who lost total contact with life, started wandering into forest and mountains. But that's not the only truth about Indian culture. Indian culture equally encouraged another side of understanding creation, that's called Leela. Leela literally means that it is the unfolding of the divine. It's evolutionary through and through. Leela literally means the divine is unfolding himself through time and space, in form, and through various forms of manifestation. And this unfolding has a direction and a purpose. So in Indian thought, there is no antagonism between evolution and intelligent design. The two are harmonized. So when we look at the story of Dasavatar, as we find written in the Vishnu Puran as well as Srimad Bhagavad Puran, we see that if you just notice the 10 avatars, they are at once an evolution of form and an evolution of consciousness, thereby creating a connecting link in not only from the animal to man, but in different human types which are evolving from the brute to modern civilization and to yet further, which is like the far unseen end which the rishis saw. So what is this story of the parable of the 10 avatars? We see that the first avatar is fish, who is God become fish in the water. And the second is tortoise, who is on the fish and the land. And the third is Varaha, the wild boar on the land, who has mastered the land. And out of Varaha comes Narsingh Avatar, who is half lion and half human. And then comes Vamana, the dwarf human. And then Parshurama of the axe, who is an extremely rajasic man, extremely mighty like a Kshatriya, who destroys anything that he finds is evil or wicked. But then that's not the ideal. So there comes Rama, the man who has sattvic, illumined reason, who wants to establish a society based on equity of justice and probity. And then goes still beyond. We have Buddha, we have Krishna, who go beyond the limits of mankind to something, a state which is still further. And then, yes, the final Kalki, who establishes the kingdom of heaven upon earth. So we see this scheme, which is so beautiful. Sri Aurobindo includes in this scheme of avatars Christ, because, he also tries to bring down the kingdom of heaven upon earth. So we see something very interesting, that there is a story of evolution. Now, evolution itself is manifestation. The seed of the divine consciousness is buried in matter. And through matter as a condition, it's evolving. Just as when we bury the seed within the soil, it evolves through a whole lot of processes. First stage is misery, suffering, darkness. And the second stage is it bursts open to the light. And within the seed are concealed the plant, the tree, the flowers, and the fruits. So this seed they discovered, and these are the truths that we are speaking of. So how does this unfolding take place? Is it just a wild unfolding any which way? Or there is a logic and a law behind it? So the logic and the law of unfolding, and we can become a participant to it incidentally, is what is called as dharma. So dharma, there is no word which can be really... There are two words in Indian thought which have no parallel. One is dharma, and second, paradoxically, arya. Arya was never about northerners versus southerners or about a racial type. Arya was a type of humanity, and the Arya could be anywhere in this world. The noble, the Shrestha, one who is striving towards perfection. Later on, of course, I know all these theories that came in to create all kinds of division, but Arya word has no parallel. Similarly, Dharma. Arya is a very ancient word, by the way. Even before it started in India, we find its roots in Iran, we find its roots in Russia, we find its roots in Greek literature. So, another word which is very, very amazing is Dharma. So, Dharma is not about a religion. That's how it is unfortunately today used. Dharma means, it comes from the root dhra, that which holds. Meaning thereby we need to discover what holds us. Now, just imagine, if I believe that my body holds me, what will be my natural outcome of my way of life? I will live only for the bodily life, to enjoy, to have pleasure, to, maybe observe some healthy lifestyle so that my body can be healthy. But at the end of the day, why would I care for anybody, even the next door neighbor, if body is all? So is my body the that which holds me? No, said Indian thought. This is revealed in a very beautiful parable. Next, does the life force hold me? My life of desires, enjoyments and all, is that what holds me? Is that the core of my existence? If I say yes, I'll go down the way that many modern so-called civilized nations have gone, where we do everything, we create everything for the sake of the bodily life and the vital enjoyment. But we become hollow inside. Is mind myself? Is my thought, my ideology, my opinion myself? Then we will end up in a state of perpetual division, because we know that there is always this division in the mind between one viewpoint and another viewpoint and a third viewpoint and a fourth viewpoint. And the way people debate on television is a sight to be seen. It's quite an amusement to see. So it was not satisfied with that. It wanted a still greater reconciling truth. And that's what it called as the spiritual truth, the divine reality. So what holds me is something like an unchanging, imperishable existence. It's one in all beings. By its very nature, there is no special religion or a human being, however fallen or however great he may be. Why human being? Even animals, birds, plants, stone, everything. That one existence is everywhere. And that is why in Indian thought we have so many conceptions of so many gods. Even a stone you can pick up and make a god. It's not about, as people understand, Indians worship gods and rivers. Yes, of course, because, there is a courage to see the God everywhere, to see the one divine everywhere. It's not just a lip service that God is everywhere. It can be translated into practice. Literally, one can pick up a grain of dust, sand, and you see some of these mystics have had this experience when William Blake says, hold eternity in a grain of sand. What does he mean? He has touched that bedrock of Indian thought and culture that look, even in a grain of sand, the divine dwells. That's why even sand is sacred, stone is sacred. The sense of sacredness that pervades throughout Indian culture is precisely because it sees the divine expressing itself in so many ways, from the dust below our feet to the quasar, the star, the galaxies, to bird and beast and stone and man and rivers and mountains and everywhere. So this vision of divine everywhere is something fantastic. But it was not satisfied with that. It was not that, okay, fine, we worship these things and we find some deeper reality. It went still further. A thought which is so amazing. It did not cut world with God. So in the conception of Lila, you don't cut world with God. So what does it say? It says God is within us. This idea of the immanent divine is something so amazing, so liberating. Where do you find God? Which temple you have to go? You don't have to go any temple. He has already built temples and abodes for himself. The first temple of God is atom. That means we must respect material things, not because they are useless or we will get attached, but because God dwells in them. That's how we see Indian civilizations in good old days. How much they respected matter. And no wonder they discovered some fantastic things out of matter itself. Then where is the second temple? Is the universe is the temple. Where is the third temple? Earth is the temple. If you just follow this principle, we don't have to teach not to pollute, don't throw plastics, all this is not necessary. Just ingrain this idea that earth is a living reality. And that is enough to worship Mother Earth. Where is the fourth temple? In every creature. But the best temple, the most important temple, where the creation can directly meet the Creator, something very amazing, is within man, the immanent divine. So from there came up this whole idea that we can meet God, and it is enshrined in one of the greatest formula ever uttered for mankind. Sohamasmi. I am that. That divine who is there and that divine who is here, it's the same. The word used in Indian culture in ancient Sanskrit is the same for Purusha, the divine being, and Purusha, the human being. The same word is used because we are made in the image of God. What does it mean, made in the image of God? We are meant to become one with the Godhead that dwells within us. So the whole purpose of Leela was, through a process of complex unfolding, through all the ups and downs, through misery and pain, as much as through happiness and joy, through wars as well as ages of peace. Ultimately, we have to realize that state where we become one with the Godhead within. That's what the whole struggle and conflict is. So in Indian thought, we have this importance of the Devas-Asur Sangram. The Devas and Asuras, they are not racial types again. The Deva is within us and the Asura is within us. Asura is all those tendencies, as the Gita says, which create a selfish life, which create a life of false pride, vanity, arrogance, life of desires. And Devic life is that life which is full of Teja, where we like to concentrate our energies and turn it towards useful purposes. So that's a life of Tapa. There is a life of Sanyama, Shama, where we Shama, to forgive. All these are aspects of the Devas. And of course, they are also personified gods, and there is a reason Indian thought never created this bridge, this antagonism between the form and the formless. Every form was an aspect of the formless. Formless expressed himself through form. And it is so true. Even of matter, it is as much true. Every material object can be resolved into a state of energy and then still further into a formless state of consciousness. So they were not seen as antagonistic, but form was meant to manifest the formless truth. And the whole story of evolution of yoga and philosophy was how we can assist this process. So that which helps us to grow and manifest that truth which is within us was dharma. So dharma was not defined by a certain set of do's and don'ts. Do's and don'ts evolve from that. And for each, because human beings go through different stages of life, and different human beings are in different stages of life. The whole idea of rebirth was to allow continuity in this journey. So we all there is an imperishable, indestructible element, the soul, the spiritual element. It goes from life to life and grows through that process, because obviously one life is a very limited term. At the same time, in one life, you can have, you're already starting with not at ground zero, but at, who knows, -1 or +1 or -10 or +10. So it's an unfair game. So there is a whole series of lives through which all of us evolve. And right from matter itself. And through that process of evolution, we reach a point where we can start manifesting the hidden Godhead. So the revered ones in India were not those who were, having a lot of wealth and position and outer prestige, but those who had come closest to God, who were close to realizing the divine. So in India, always the seers, the saints, they are revered. Not because they, had an institution, but simply because they are closer to God. A realized person is always revered, more than anything else, even more than the scripture. And then after that, those who were guardians of society, the kings, who were always meant to act under subordination to the seers, the rishis, who knew the truth. So dharma was that which helps us in coming closer to truth. And for each man there was a dharma. For each person, because depending on his constitution, his occupation, his unique, peculiar way of life, he could adopt a certain dharma and evolve through that. So dharma was a very wide and flexible term, but not flexible in the sense anybody could do anything. But its essence was that which helps us to evolve and grow into the Godhead who is hidden within us. That is dharma. Because that Godhead holds our life. That Godhead is manifesting himself. It comes from the root. Dharma comes from dhra, to hold. So from that comes dharti, dharani. So it's, we can't speak about Indian culture without speaking of two languages, Sanskrit and Tamil, which are the ancient, with the same common root. Look how it is united. Shivas, as the story goes, they're amazing way of uniting it. With the right side when he played the damru, Sanskrit came. With the left side when he played the damru, Tamil came. There is no antagonism. And if we go back to the roots, Sri Aurobindo, who did a lot of research, he's a master linguist, mastered 32 languages, which includes Greek, Latin, French, Spanish, Italian. He could write poetry in that. He discovered the roots of the commonality between Tamil and Sanskrit through ancient Sanskrit, through certain common roots which he found in other languages, even in Latin language. So, when we go back to this origin, what do we discover? We discover humanity is one, because in every one there is the one divine essence. Today we are talking so much about unity, the problem of division, because we have cut humanity from its roots and suddenly said your origin is here at a point of time. But our origin is timeless, it's eternal. How can we fight? We are all children who are in a play field. So when Mother was asked how can humanity become one, she said very simply one word: by becoming conscious of its origin. So we see this concept of dharma, which is very amazing and unique. Then there is a third aspect of dharma. One is that which holds the eternal reality, and then the process of manifestation and our actions, our thoughts, and then in the most outward conduct. So because Indian mind tries to work in details, one may find it very difficult to understand, because today the India that we see has been so too much under different foreign dominations. So we have forgotten what Indian mind really is. But now it is bouncing back. Extensive creative urge. Look at any of the temples anywhere, especially in the southern parts. Look at, Meenakshi, Madurai. Look at Konark temple in Odisha, far Odisha. Look at Tanjavur temple. And what one is amazed with is the details. Look at the minute architecture, the way it is built. It's amazing that how they could conceive. Compare it with most of the places in the world, even very good, high-rising buildings, skyscrapers, etc. So plank compared to this kind of architecture. So in details, so it tried to bring out this inner truth at a third level in all the outer conduct and outer affairs of life. So thereby everything started becoming sacred and a sacerdocy. So marriage was not a legal thing. Marriage was a sacerdocy. So, when people got married, they were supposed to be united. Now it's a different thing. We have lost all that, and that's why perhaps there's a need to understand these beautiful roots. I remember in my own marriage, somebody said, okay, we'll do the Havan. And very rightfully, my partner and as well as, some of my people, they said, no, we want a proper, these mantras are so beautiful. And for the first time, I heard the mantras that are chanted during marriage. And I realized this is the ideal of a relationship. Relationship is not about just tying a wedding knot and, signing a register or saying before God that, we love each other and henceforth we'll be with each other. It's something so sacred and beautiful. Look at the ritual. 3 times the man will be in front. 4 times the wife will be in front. What does it mean? It's about equality in the deepest sense. Who is, very often we hear about equality in women much before the movement of feminism had started in the world, where women were oppressed all over the world. That's a very unfortunate part of world history, not just about one. And in some parts of the world, they are still very much oppressed. But in India, way back, the whole feminism started with the ideal of Durga. Who is a woman? She is Shakti. Without him, Shiva is lifeless. He is lying below her feet. And that's how when we look at the origin of creation itself, it's by the Shakti that this creation comes. There are beautiful stories in the Rig Vedas that say that when Shakti went away from Brahman, the Lord, the Brahman felt that he is powerless. So the true feminism that we find in India, its seeds, are spiritual feminism. Oh, woman, do not become like man. That doesn't make you equal. Realize your own power within, your own Shakti. Even man, if he has to become truly full of virya, strength, courage, nobility, wisdom, he must realize the Shakti which is lying within, the Kundalini Shakti. He must discover the Shakti which is within him. So without Shakti, this creation, anything is lifeless. So this was the tribute and worship it gave to women in the scriptures. What we do today is a different matter. But still in India, I must say, compared to many other places, this understanding is there. So much so that one of the tantras says so interestingly, Swami Vivekananda quotes it, to worship all women is true tantra. Can we just imagine? So when the wife came to the house, she was supposed to be Lakshmi coming to the house, supposed to be respected like that. When children were born, it was something sacred because everything was a sacerdocy. So when the child was taken in the hand of the first person who took the child in hand, he was supposed to utter the mantra Om. Not, and what is Om? Om is the most secular, if you want to put it, spiritual symbol. And it is used by certain religions, by reversing it upside down, by side twisting it. It's the original sound. Just imagine, it's not even a being, not even a state. It's the sound from which creation started. Meaning thereby all creation starts with this sound which yogis discovered in their inner meditation, that when they went back, all creation can be resolved into sounds and lights. This is pure physics. But where does the first light, first photon, first ray, and where is the origin of the first sound? So when they went through that, they discovered the original naad, the swara. It can be only realized by going within because we carry the source within us. So when they discovered, they said, oh, this is the sound. Now, it's not that Om the way we utter or people try to utter, but at least they try to bring it. So that's why everything starts with Om, because the creation starts with Om. And very often we'll see everything ends with Swaha, offering. Who is Swaha? Swaha is the power of Agni. She is the consort of Agni. So when we do this act of Swaha, what does it mean? It means that whatever tendency I have may be purified by the fire within. Where is that fire? Fire is the fire of aspiration, of seeking. And that fire purifies all things, because that seeking itself cures me of many, many aspects. And instead of giving people a rule of living, much easier to tell them that, look, your life doesn't stop here. You have to keep going further and further. All renunciation was for a greater delight, because Indian thought declared that who is God? At least in 2-3 Upanishads, it says he is delight. He is rasovesa. So why should we renounce? Renunciation was always internal, tyaga, not sannyasa, so that we can enter into a greater upgrade the capacity of joy within us, till we touch delight which is completely free of all outer conditions. What a beautiful phrase. The very first phrase of Ishavasya Upanishad gives us Ishavasyam idam sarvam. It gives a principle of life. All this is meant for the habitation of the Lord. So how I should deal with people? As a trustee. They are none else but God who has come to us. And yes, I may wrestle with them if necessary, but I'll not hate them. Why? Because they are all meant for the habitation of the Lord. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita. Therefore, by renouncing inwardly, we can really enter into a state of beatific delight. We won't even need to possess anything, because we ignorantly believe if I have this, I will become, happy. But happiness should be a natural state of a human being. If we renounce this idea that by this or that I'll get happy, we'll discover the delight. Tena taktena bhunjita magrida kasasvidhanam. So we won't need to run after somebody else's money, somebody else's wealth, possessions. But whatever comes to us, we'll receive it as a gift of God. And when it goes from us, we equally take it as it has gone into the sum total of creation. So the other element which came along with this thought of dharma was yajna. Yajna was to purify, to refine. Every tendency, speech must become a yajna. So there was yajna of vak. Normally it is so crude. Our sounds are crude. Our intonation is crude. Our thought is crude. Can this thought, a speech be refined through yajna? Yajna means to let it pass through the fire of aspiration. I want something more beautiful, more refined. That's how Indian language, swara, music all originated. We reach that ultimate degree of refinement possible, which comes through contact with the deep reality. And that reality is the same. Pursue through music, you will touch it. Pursue through science, you will touch it. Pursue through geography and history, you will touch it. That's the interesting part. Pursue through pure analyzing of material existence as a material scientist, at some point you will touch that reality, because it's everywhere in everything. And that's how we are discovering different states of matter. When we were children, we heard about 3 states of matter. Then we learned now about 4 states of matter. There is a refined state of matter. Then today we speak about 5 states of matter, 7 states of matter. Till we ultimately discover the final padartha, which is there in Indian thought. How they discovered padartha? simply by discovering that one unity which is within everything. So every aspect, every gesture of life, bowing down to elders, not elders, frankly speaking, but to those whom we revere really, who have the knowledge, is a sign that I am humble. So even a person who may be a very knowledgeable person outwardly, yet bows down at the feet of a saint or a seer. Why? Because even a king bows down at the feet of a saint or a seer. Why? Because it's a sign of humility. Whatever my knowledge may be, still there is something still greater. Like the Tikabana artist in Japan, leave a little scissor that somebody else can perfect it. So this humility inbuilt within the culture. This Namaste. What is Namaste? We don't say hi, we don't say good morning. We say this Namaste. Why we do this hand? It's something so amazing. Sometimes we do it here. See the seat of the self. Where is it here? Ask any person. Who are you? If he has to use a gesture, he'll say this. He won't say, touch his hand and say, I am this. Then, we'll think he is fit for the asylum. Nor will he beat his stomach and say, I am this. We'll think he is too crude and vulgar. But if he says this, I am Mr. So-and-so, if you have to make a gesture. Because instinctively and intuitively, we know that the divine presence is here, in the heart of every creature. And then Namaste. I bow down to the divine in you, Asti, to the presence inside you. What a wonderful way of life. So in everything from birth till death, the whole affairs of life were conducted with the sense of the sacred, with the sense of the divine presence. That we have lost it, yes, it's a pity. Still it is there, and I am glad that now there is a need to discover, because the whole file has been corrupted. Now we understand with Indian thought there are the gods, worshipping of plant and stone, but we have never saw it with this eye that this is a highly Catholic way of living, that everything is God. Why not stone? Why not house? When we enter a house, there is Graha Pravesh. Everything is God. God dwells in everything. The house is meant as a dwelling place for the God. And then to respect the other aspect of Indian life was the stages of life. So we had the first stage when a child goes to student. So during the student phase, what was important? Brahmacharya ashram. Brahmacharya literally means you learn to gather and concentrate your energies and turn them upward for a higher purpose. It was not to prepare children to, just pass exams and take a good job and earn a fat salary. So it was regarded as the Brahmacharya ashram, when children were taught ways and means by which they could learn to conserve energy. And instead of wasting and throwing it, turn it towards higher and higher purposes and deeper ways of living. They were taught the whole science of life in a holistic way. Not just as in fact, we don't even have psychology in a way, thankfully, because modern psychology is all rot. I can say that, being a psychologist. And that is something which needs to be taught. The science of living, how we should live. We are not taught that. So Gurukuls used to teach them science of living, how to draw energy, every aspect of life. And then one entered into the Grahastha ashram. So in Grahastha ashram, again Dharma. At every stage, Dharma was required. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So first, during the first phase of life, they understood what Dharma is. Next phase, Grahastha ashram, Artha, Kama. So you expand life of desire, because they understood that it's a natural way of life through which we grow. So it was not like a monastic life vis-a-vis the ordinary life. Ordinary life itself was a preparation for something greater. There was a continuity in life. So when we are a grahastha, we are naturally earning money, we are expanding desires, and through all this we were preparing ourselves through all the experiences for something greater. So this little existence, when we lead with dharma, eventually opens a door towards a still greater existence. So the next stage was Vanaprastha ashram, where we start gathering deeper knowledge, higher knowledge, transcendental knowledge, that behind this existence there is something greater, because we have gone through that phase. And then finally it was the moksha, where one becomes freed from the bonds of ignorance. So it respected the different stages of human life, and how much misery could be avoided if even today the elders understand that now we have to pass the baton to the younger generation. In Indian thought, it was inbuilt, ingrained. So these are some of the things, but the most important fundamental thing about Indian thought is, one, the spiritual aim and the conception of man. Nowhere we discover this conception of man, that man is not a fallen being, but man is essentially divine. You see, when Swami Vivekananda started his Chicago speech, he started with these words that, brothers and sisters of America, I am so happy and I am proud to belong to a religion which has declared that man is essentially divine. Within him, there is the divine nature deep within. That's how Swadharma and all these things come. There is the divine nature within us. So, all our life is to basically discover and uncover this divine nature which is within. Something so beautiful. The concept of man itself is something powerful. And yes, finally, the master key of Indian thought and culture is spirituality. Every little thing will have some kind of connect with vaster, deeper, higher consciousness. What is spirituality? Spirituality is not otherworldliness, non material states as it is often defined. There are many non material things which are not spiritual. Occult, for example, Guhya Vidya, which was different from Adhyatma Vidya and Brahma Vidya. Spirituality is things of the spirit, that which is the origin of things. When we discover it through whatever means, in whatever way, that is spirituality. And why should we discover it? Not to vanish into the ineffable, but to bring that spirit back into our life and transform our individual and collective existence. This is something what Shobindo, beautifully reveals, because just as we have different stages of life and different grades of existence, so also there are grades of world. Today we speak about string theory and the superstring theory. So in Indian thought, material world was only one of the many worlds. There was behind it a prana lok, the vital world, beyond it the manomay lok, the mental world, beyond still the vigyanmay world, the supramental. And the more we ascend, the greater forces, powers and wisdom we can bring to make our life more and more perfect. It's the same thing like when man went into space, he just didn't go into an empty area. He brought the possibility of the internet and rapid communication today. So, same way, the more we ascend in our consciousness, discover these greater and higher worlds, the greater the possibility of expressing, perfecting, and fulfilling our life. So, the grand aim of Indian thought was not world negation, but world fulfillment. Not self denial. Self denial of the lower self was necessary for the fulfillment of the greater self within us. Self denial itself became a means of a greater self finding and self fulfillment. I think with these words, I'll close. If I don't know if there's a question we can take, otherwise, we can meet tomorrow. Namaste.
So, thank you, sir, for this wonderful lecture, which is holistic and covering the diverse aspects of the emotional, the physical, the social, the spiritual, and the empirical dimensions of human life, the goals, the techniques, and the methods that were adopted by our ancients through their insight into these areas. And so, uh, as you know, because you have had a wide experience both in the army as well as you have been treating patients. So, this inner awareness that is life transforming, that is very vital because evolution takes place in and through consciousness. So all of us are at different levels of our emotional evolution, which will ultimately culminate in the realization of the self. So you have given us these this analysis of life, the stages, the techniques, all that, and then uh, I now keep the session open for discussion. If you want to ask any questions, any clarifications for 5-10 minutes, because sir is a very busy person, and so you may ask questions. The session is open for discussion.
Good morning, sir.
Morning to you.
I'm Dr. Jonas from Asian Christian Studies from Pondicherry University.
Glad to greet you, sir.
Namaste, because I should not
Namaste.
have
Yes.
after listening to your lecture. It was a very beautiful statement that you made about the origin of feministic theory long back in India. Many do not know it, actually. It's a very sad thing. And how is it possible if India was the origin of feministic, rather equality of gender? When did we actually Indians started oppressing the better half? Is there a
Yes.
possibility? Would you please say something about that, sir?
Yes, sir. So this is very interesting as a question, because at least till the Itihasas, we do find, that women were in all the different fields of life. They were organizers, warriors, they were administrators, kings, countless examples. Like the Vedas itself, 30% of the Vedic hymns are written by women who are Rishikas. So they were ever respected in every area. There are countless stories, but not going into that. When did it start? Now, if I look at some of the areas where women are oppressed, let's take in India itself. It's something very interesting that if we just look at India, in the western part of India, you will see all these traditions where women started covering themselves. There was gungat, there was even sati, which originally it meant something else, but obviously a horrifying thing to die on the pyre. And women should stay inside the house. You will see. I have gone to all the states of India. So, I have studied this phenomena very interestingly, both being in Air Force and, of course, as speaker. If you go to the far east where I was posted, Jorhat and Manipur, you will see it's a matriarchal society. It's very interesting that women have the upper hand, Bengal and onwards there. So basically, as whatever studies that I did, it was the western frontier where there was so much oppression and the invasion which took place. Now this led to different responses in different parts. The Far East was hardly touched by that kind of invasion. So it continued to be matriarchal and it prospered in its own way in that way. It has its own issues and not to discuss that. But in the western areas, especially we'll see in the provinces of Haryana and Rajasthan, there is an extreme degree of oppression in this sense, not any active oppression today, but we see the parda and women should be inside the house. And with that came up all the ills and evils at every level. If we go down south, there is a great degree of freedom. But I suppose what happened in the south was also because all these invasions were taking place and India is one unit. Probably, to preserve the culture, whatever way it was understood became a very strong necessity. So that's how I see these different parts of India where, they were not just physical invasion, but especially the Islamic invasion. It did disturb the balance. We see in Kashmir again, now, we have this movie. So in Kashmir again, we see such a holistic culture was there. There was, Vedanta, there was Tantra, there was Sikhism, there was Buddha thought, there was Christianity, Judaism, all flourishing very beautifully under one single place. And if you look at the culture, there is so much of liberal thought which was there in the olden Kashmir. But again, post-invasions, exodus, so I suppose it's a result of that. That's how I look at it. And because it's a long history, almost 700-800 years. But if you look at even the time of King Ashoka, we know whom he fought against, the queen of Kalinga. So, they were warriors, princes. Manipur, if we go, warrior princes, Arjuna has to fight a battle. So this came, my own feeling is post-invasion, number one. Second is that we lost contact with our own cultural roots. And an alternative narrative of history came up, where the entire understanding of Indian culture has been twisted upside down. So today, because of a kind of another thought which has come, and I don't want to label it because labeling is never a good thing to do, but today's youth, they don't know what really is there in Indian culture. So they just follow, even feminism that they follow is not spiritual feminism, but simply what is called a gender equality, which is not enough. The woman must wake up to her own power, which is far ahead. Gender equality is important. That's an automatic thing. It's a baseline, not the highest line. That's how I look at it. Yes.
Thank you, sir. It's very clear. Thank you. Appreciate that.